Well, the internet is full of great videos and advice out there, but it's also full of a lot of crap and terrible advice that you should never listen to. And that's what I'm going to talk about today to kind of clear some of these things up, because the points that I want to make in this video and some of the advice that's out there is so common and it's so widely spread that even if it's false, people kind of pass it off as being the truth. And there's a lot of things like that, but when it comes to guns and the firearm world, one mistake or one piece of bad advice can actually lead to like really detrimental outcomes. Now, I've made a ton of mistakes since starting this channel, and I've even given some bad advice out there, and I'm here to right the ship. So I'll tell you some of the bad advice that I've given, some of the things that I've learned along the way, and some of which I've had to learn the hard way. Now, of course, I'd love to hear from y'all, man. What do you think the worst advice is when it comes to the gun world? Or maybe one of those things that has just been passed down over the years that continues to be portrayed as the truth when you know it really isn't. Let me know down below. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Let's talk about one of the first ones, and that is, in order to become a better shooter, all you really have to do is just keep shooting. It's kind of like riding a motorcycle, right? All you have to do to become a better rider is just spend time in the saddle. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. Now, is it true that you can look up certain trainers, people right here on the internet, and use those techniques to become a better shooter on your own at the range and just put the time, money, and everything in and become a great shooter? Yes. Is that the most efficient way? No. Is it probably the most expensive way? Well, yeah, because you're going to blow through a lot of rounds, and just learning a few different techniques can save you a whole lot of time and money. The other thing is, too, that when you have an outside perspective and somebody that knows what they're doing, they can call those mistakes out before you even pull the trigger for the first time. I started this channel literally with almost zero experience when it comes to shooting any kind of handguns. Right? I shot 22 rifles growing up and 410 shotgun, right? Going squirrel hunting and stuff like that, but never really shot any kind of handguns. So through thousands and tens of thousands of rounds at this point, I have finally become a pretty proficient shooter, but it took a long time to get there, and I took on a ton of criticism, and most of it was justified when it comes to trying to give advice and yet not really knowing what I was doing. Now, I made it perfectly clear from the beginning that I was no kind of professional. I wanted to share me and Mrs. Headshot's experience from the very beginning and show the progression of new shooters. So that was the idea. But if I would have taken one course by one certified instructor, a weekend course, something, man, it could have saved me a ton of time. So yeah, it may seem expensive, man, you know, $500, $600, $800 to take a class plus 1,000 rounds of ammo, you know, like that's just too expensive. But trust me, it can save you a lot in the long run too, especially when you start carrying a firearm, because in my opinion, there are too many people that carry firearms around that have no idea what they're doing with them. Now, yeah, we want more people carrying firearms. We want good people carrying firearms. But we also want those people to know how to use those guns. That's equally as important. Let's start with one of the most misunderstood conceptions out there, and that is shoot to wound. Now, instead of giving you some surface level, you know, hey, this just comes from Hollywood and all that kind of crap, which it absolutely does, there are actual statistics behind this that make it even more insufferable when somebody says, I'm just gonna shoot to wound. Yeah, I'm gonna shoot them in the leg just to stop them. Because on the surface it sounds like the humane thing, but once you've done any kind of research on this, you start to realize how ridiculous this concept really is. And FBI statistics actually back this up. First of all, let's take into account the stress. Even trained officers under stress, according to multiple studies, like 38% of them never even saw their sights. The chances of missing shots under stress go up exponentially. According to some studies, you're going to blink more. Your eyes may be closed more than you think. Adrenaline is pumping, and it is going to be hard to hit a shot that will completely neutralize the threat. As a matter of fact, here's something very interesting. The only way to truly stop a threat is upper spinal cord or brain. Otherwise, what you're depending on is for there to be enough blood loss essentially to incapacitate, and that takes time. And again, adrenaline can keep people going and doing things under extreme stress, things that they normally couldn't or wouldn't be able to do. Here's the other thing. Leg wounds are extremely dangerous. This is still considered deadly force, but it's not the ideal spot whenever you're trying to protect yourself. Remember, the use of deadly force is only really justified when you're in imminent threat or danger from this person. So if you're saying I'm going to shoot to wound, just basically admitted that the deadly force may not have actually been justified. If it's not justifiable for you to use deadly force, well, deadly force may not be justified at all. And fine-tuned precision shots of extremities and, just wing them, that kind of stuff is all Hollywood BS, video game logic that nobody in the real world and no real trainers are actually going to teach you. Plus, like I said, the justification for using deadly force really takes a hit for your own sake and your own defense afterwards if you say, I was just trying to shoot to wound. Remember that whole bad advice thing I was talking about that I've actually given in the past as well? Yeah, this is unfortunately one of them, and I didn't learn this the hard way, but through commenters and righteous, justified criticism, I learned very quickly that stand your ground laws and castle doctrine do not necessarily protect you in a righteous self-defense situation. These laws are simple on the surface, but super complex underneath. So stand your ground and castle doctrine very quickly. Stand your ground basically says you have no duty to retreat in a place that you are lawfully allowed to be in. Okay, as long as you're not committing crimes or doing unlawful activity, that's a very basic version. Castle doctrine basically says anywhere that you consider a domicile, okay, whether that's your home, some states extend this to your vehicle, and even your place of business means you have no duty to retreat there, and you can protect those places and your persons and people that are with you in these places against threats of deadly force. These are reasonable threats of deadly force, though. Imminent danger and reasonable force carries a lot of the weight here. You can't just say, hey man, that guy made me nervous, I had to shoot him. Typically isn't going to hold up too well. But there's like 23 states that have some sort of civil protection for you if you have stand your ground and a castle doctrine in place. But that leaves over half the states where you have no civil protection, and even in states where you are found to be justified in your self-defense shooting, that doesn't mean you're not going to go to jail, and it certainly doesn't mean that there's not going to be a trial involved. Jury, judges, by that time you are deep in the system, and guess what that takes? Yeah, a ton of money. This is why I talk about how a lot of gun owners find themselves in a situation. It's not as black and white as you always would hope it would be, right? There's not always a camera just pointing at you. It's clear that somebody was trying to hurt you and or your family, and that you were completely justified. It's not always that cut and dry. And so in order for a lot of gun owners to retain their rights, they have to get legal counsel. And you're talking about, this can run tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, or even more sometimes. So what a lot of gun owners end up having to do is plea out, and they may lose their gun rights in the process. And in that video that I made a long time ago, I basically said, concealed carry insurance and services like that is totally unneeded. It's just a way to get money from you. Well, That is completely wrong. This is one of the biggest and best, and honestly, cheapest investments you can make for you and your family. There's so many different situations that can arise, from road rage to a home invasion to a carjacking. Who started it? Who escalated it? Where are you? Are you in a neighboring state where your gun is technically illegal even though it's legal in your state? Did you come home? Did you, you know, drink a beer after work? Can that be used against you? What happens if you're in a gun-free zone? And that's just scratching the surface, unfortunately. By the way, the gun you use in that self-defense situation, it's probably gone. What happens afterwards, right? When you need to talk to somebody and yet you're talking about potentially thousands of dollars for therapy and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's too much for most people to just take on by themselves. So there's a ton of companies out there. I'm sure there's a lot of good ones. I actually choose attorneys on retainer because there is 3 criteria and that's it. You reasonably believe that you are going to be charged with a crime in a self-defense situation. You also believe that you acted in good faith in that self-defense situation and you're a member at the time of the incident. And that's it. But not all of these policies are the same. Attorneys on retainer, they deal with self-defense situations solely. It's not some cookie cutter insurance kind of policy where there's carve outs and, excuses for them to just get out of whatever situation you might be in, right? They are known and have built a brand based on backing gun owners when other companies couldn't or wouldn't. Expungements, red flag laws, gun-free zones, everything I just talked about, they cover all of it. And the prices are super reasonable as well, whether you do a single or a family plan. There's not all these different tiers where you have to get this one in order to get the maximum coverage and all that kind of stuff. It's very simple. 24/7 emergency access. They tell you what you should say, what you should not say. Don't incriminate yourself to the police. You want to cooperate with the police, but you don't want to say the wrong thing. Remember that seconds after these situations happen, you most of the time don't know everything you just did. It's fascinating when you watch a lot of these encounters in self-defense situations because people don't even remember how many rounds they shot. And it could have happened just a minute ago. They happen very quickly, and you want somebody on your side that's clear thinking and be able to represent you from day one. This is terrible advice. If somebody ever tells you, hey, you don't need that, it's just a waste of money, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, no, don't listen to that advice. I may still have viewers here that actually called me out when I made that original video so many years ago. And to you, even if you're not watching, if you ever come across this video again, I thank each and every one of you because it was terrible advice. But now, of course, I work with what I consider to be the best in the industry. That's attorneys on retainer. So if that's a service that you have not yet signed up for, it is something you need as a gun owner. Make sure you use the link and discount code down below in order to save yourself money on the one-time sign-up fee. Do not be caught without this. I'll tell you, probably the single worst advice that I've ever heard in my life when it comes to self-defense situations is, I'm going to have time, right? This applies to people that don't carry their gun on them, that casually, walk around a store looking down at their phone, not aware of anything that's going on. Look, I've done it too. I get it, all right? It's not like we're all perfect and we're all wired to, constantly be scanning all of the time. I understand it, but the other thing that is completely sobering that you have to understand is even when we look at officer statistics, which is a really good measure for self-defense situations too, we find that, almost 70% of officers that were killed in the line of duty died within 0 to 10 feet of their perpetrators. Over 50% of them were like 0 to 5 feet. These things do not happen across an entire football field. The other really sobering thing is most of these encounters are 2 to 5 seconds. Think about that. That is extremely quick. So to think now that you have time to pull your gun out of your purse that's in a holster, unholster it, God forbid it's not chambered, then chamber the round, and then put a shot on target that's going to be able to stop a perpetrator is absolutely fantasy world. Look, there are bad things that happen to good people every single day, and we don't want to see that. I'm also not telling you that you have to be paranoid 24/7 and go into some kind of mental collapse. But you need to realistically think about these situations, the strong statistics that show just how close and just how fast these things actually happen, and avoid these situations at all costs if you can. And here is one of the biggest things: reaction versus action. Somebody that's taking action against you has already decided, they're already moving, they're already acting. You, on the reaction part, have to assess, decide, then act. Here's something I found that's pretty interesting. It's called the Tueller drill. And essentially, they will put officers in these situations where a person with a knife is like 21 feet away from them, and they have to react in time in order to draw their gun and neutralize the threat. Well, somebody that's 21 feet away from you with a knife can cover ground or cover that distance in like less than 1.5 seconds. They can cover 6 feet in about a second, 25 feet in 1.6 seconds. To draw a holster, how fast do you do it? I don't know. Let me know down below. How fast can you draw your gun from concealment? The point is, it happens quickly. I'll tell you something that was even worse, man. I saw an officer, Jonah Hernandez. He was the first officer to be killed in the line of duty at the Las Cruces Police Department. And it all happened from a pretty routine call. Business owner said, hey, somebody's trespassing. We've had some problem with homeless people. So, Jonah, he approaches the person. He's very cordial, kind. He gets within that distance, right? It's kind of hard to tell, but he gets pretty close to the guy, and he's, like I said, he's very nice to him. He says, hey, is this your property? The guy responds, okay. And within a blink of an eye, this guy pulled a Michael Myers-sized butcher knife out and unfortunately took Jonah's life just like that. Stabbed him multiple times. I mean, it was really super heartbreaking. It seems like, because a lot of people are like, man, why didn't he draw his gun? But it's almost like a survival tactic, because he goes to turn. Of course, I can't show any of this on YouTube, but he goes to turn, and I assume that he's trying to get himself some distance away because he just got a little bit too close, and it seemed cordial enough to where he was kind of comfortable with that. And unfortunately, this guy took his life. Fortunately, the only thing in this situation that's positive is there was a bystander that was keeping an eye on this. I think they knew the business owner, something like that, and they ended up pulling their firearm out and taking care of the threat and rendering aid. But like I said, unfortunately, Jonah ended up losing his life in the line of duty. It just shows you how quickly these things can truly happen. Now here's more bad advice that you might hear from time to time, and that is just fire a warning shot. Again, this leans on the humanity of what is supposed to be a pretty dangerous situation. Warning shots in a lot of states are still considered deadly force. They even did a study, I think this was back in like 2020, that essentially said even when the law leaves the door open for like officers to use warning shots, basically deadly force is already justifiable. And in those cases, they can't put themselves meaning the officers, or others at risk when they fire a warning shot, but that is like a very slim carve out. Outside of like prisons and stuff like that, which I don't even know that they're widely used there, even officers, right, are going to give you verbal warnings before using deadly force. Warning shots essentially puts other people at risk and can even escalate the situation without taking care of the imminent threat at all. Essentially, what you've done is you've put everybody else around you at risk, and the threat is still at your doorstep or wherever. And you'll see these videos pop up from time to time, people just shooting out windows of cars and all this kind of stuff. It's absolutely enraging, first of all, to gun owners that actually take this stuff seriously. But second of all, some studies have said, there's upwards of 20% mortality rate for stray bullets. Some have shown a 30% mortality rate. Most of the time, these stray bullets, they come down, they might hit somebody in the head. And the law really treats this almost worse than a justifiable self-defense situation, because now you can be charged with use of deadly force or even threatening the use of deadly force, and you have uncontrolled bullets. And guess what? You're still responsible for those bullets when they leave that gun. By the way, firing in the ground is really not any better, because bullets, of course, can ricochet, you have fragmenting, all of that kind of stuff too. So it's just not a good idea. It's not smart. And again, if your life is being threatened, why are we firing warning shots? It's not the most defensible thing you can do. Again, I think it kind of is trying to navigate a humane answer, but if your life is being threatened, the humanity in the other person has already left the building. If you're truly at threat here, right? A well-known example, by the way, is Marissa Alexander out of Florida. She got charged. I think she initially had like a 20-year sentence for a warning shot, and then she actually won a subsequent trial because of some bad jury instructions or something like that. But still, your freedom can absolutely be taken away from this, and worse, if you hit somebody else, you are responsible for that. There was a YouTuber, you guys may know about him, you may not, Boogie2988. Used to be a super popular YouTuber, now he's like this lolcow, I guess, you know, is what they call him. But anyways, somebody came to this door, he had beef with this guy online, and the guy came to his door, and he told the guy he was going to fire a warning shot, and he did. And he ended up getting charged with that. And remember, you can lose your gun rights in the process during all of this. So there's a lot that goes into that, man. Firing a warning shot is a really big deal in the law's eyes. Here's one that's kind of interesting and well known at this point, but still comes up from time to time. And that is the caliber of the carry gun that you have. There's a lot of people that still look down upon 9mm. It's either 45 or nothing. I actually know somebody like this, and you know, they're asking about a carry gun and all this kind of stuff, and they said it has to be a 45. I'm like, well, why does it have to be a 45? Thinking about like the 1950s? In that case, just buy a 1911 and use 230 grain ball for the rest of your life, right? I mean, there's been serious advancements in self-defense ammo, right? And 9mm especially. But here's the biggest takeaway, right? If you're not proficient with a 45, what makes you think that all of a sudden in a self-defense situation that you're going to be able to actually use that gun and hit the broadside of a barn? Chances are you're not. Now, one of the more common sayings that's kind of bad advice too is use the round that you shoot the best and that you can afford to shoot the most. Well, for most of us, right, that's actually 22. That's not a great self-defense round. 380 is going to be the minimal threshold for self-defense. 9mm to me is the sweet spot. And like I said, the advancements in this round, the availability, price of it, the effectiveness of it has come a long way since the 80s. This round has been around for a lot longer than that, but you know, that's where all of this kind of started with the famous Miami shootout. And there were some real concerns in that, of course, but like I said, technology has come a really long way. Use the round that you train the most with, but there is a minimum threshold, and shot placement, training, consistency, and a gun that you will actually carry every day are way more important than just carrying the biggest slug that you possibly can and the biggest gun you possibly can just to try to prove some kind of point. I don't even know what that point really is, but 9mm handgun, 10 or 11 rounds that you carry on you every single day is going to be better than a 2-pound 1911 that stays at home most of the time. Here's another one, right? Poking the bear a little bit, because the AR market is huge, and what you will hear is as soon as you buy your first AR, you got to buy all these accessories to go with it. I say no. There are a few things that you have to consider when you buy any rifle. you of course want to get some kind of optic for it. LPVO, red dot, magnified, not magnified. What are you using the rifle for? Is it long distance? Is it home defense? This all really depends on what you need to put on the gun, but building specific guns for specific situations is ideal. There really is no one gun does it all type of thing, especially in the rifle world. And there's very few things you can add to your gun that are really going to make you a better shooter, if any at all. Really, training is the number one thing you can invest in. But there are some mods that you should make, right? Having a sling is a good idea. Extra magazines. Of course you want some kind of optic. Maybe a vertical grip or an angled foregrip. Trigger is one of those things that can make a difference. Again, it doesn't magically make you a better shooter. Extended controls can make a difference, and it makes the gun more enjoyable, and it can make it easier to reach, all of that kind of stuff. Totally get it. Is it totally necessary though? Absolutely not. New handguard, new gas block, DLC coated bolt carrier group, extended charging handle. That is one that I actually really do like. Is it necessary? No, it's not necessary. It's more convenient. It's easier to use for sure. It's easier to reload. But then you have a new stock. Then you got to put that side folding adapter on your AR. Titanium coated pins for your lower. There's all kinds of crap. I did a whole video on this, by the way. But the point is, you don't have to buy any and every little piece for your AR in order to make it some kind of great shooter. You will find that you will spend just as much money in the accessories sometimes than you did the base rifle. When sometimes what I found anyways, this is just my personal experience and my opinion, if you take and save up the money, and let's say instead of buying, I don't know, a $300 optic, and then trying to buy all these other little pieces and crap you may not need, you buy a $600 or $700 optic, you will find that especially at the range and in lower light situations, that optic is going to serve you 1,000 times better than all these little pieces and modifications that you just had to make to your gun. There's a lot you can put in these things. I tend to get firearms that I think are set up good enough from the factory. I make minimal modifications, and then I learn how to use that gun as it is. And I would rather spend my money in a little bit higher end optics because it makes such a huge difference. Trust me, I've been there with the cheaper optic thing. I get it. There are some decent budget options out there, but a good optic, trust me, it is one of the best investments that you can make. More ammo, more training, more shooting. That's where I like to spend a lot of my time and money. Biggest point here, it's fun to accessorize. AR is the Lego for adults, right? And for good reason. Like I said, it is enjoyable. But to say you necessarily need all that crap is an absolute fabrication. You really don't. And the last piece of really bad advice when it comes to the gun world is that it's all about the guns. Look, I love all this stuff too, man. It's really exciting, and when you get a new gun or accessory or anything, man, it's just, I love it. And sometimes it's really easy to kind of just hone in on just the guns, but remember there's a whole nother side of this thing that you have to consider, right? Cat tourniquets, I just ordered 3 of them so we can have one in each car. Having first aid, having a little bit of knowledge when it comes to first aid, how to apply a tourniquet. Do you need a chest seal? Just these kinds of things that put you just a step above what other people expect, right? Again, it's not living in a world of paranoia all the time, but it's understanding that bad things happen, and if you're prepared, it can save your own life, a loved one's life, or somebody else's life. Having a fire extinguisher, right, sometimes is the difference between life and death, right? One thing that I invested in, this was last year, and I thought this was a fantastic idea actually, is like these Prepared Hero fire blankets. They don't know me, by the way. I don't know them. I just thought, man, this seems like a really good idea. And instead of, having a spray a fire extinguisher, which is still good to have, this right here, you place it over any kind of fire, and boom, there you go. So I have them all throughout the house, right? Just being prepared for stuff like this can make a huge difference. But also taking the time so your family knows the process of what happens. If somebody breaks in, what are we going to do? Who's going to go where? It's just being prepared and also having these conversations every once in a while so everybody remembers exactly what's going on. If you have kids, you know a lot of the stuff you say goes in one ear and right back out the other. So reinforcement is important too. When you're dealing with guns and you're in this, and it is a lifestyle for a lot of us, there's more things that come along with it. And so it's a good idea to be prepared for all situations. There's a lot of bad advice out there, man, some of which I've given myself, but there's also a lot of great advice and a lot of things that you can learn, and you don't even have to make the same mistakes that I did or others have done or continue to do. And when you see these things, in my opinion, it's not wrong to call it out. That doesn't mean you have to start an argument with everybody, at frickin' Easter dinner, but it's important to get good information out there. I don't know. That's just my opinion, though. I'd love to hear yours. Let me know what you think down below. If you like what I do, consider subscribing. See you in the next one. And as always, hold them down.